Hello, my beautiful human. Welcome back to the She Did It Anyway podcast. I have chills after this podcast interview that I had with Mirtha Michelle. It was so beautiful. And at the end, I had her read a couple poems from her book. And that to me was like just gold, like gold. And I want to give her the opportunity to share her bio with you. And I'm going to read it because it is so beautiful how she has done and accomplished so much all through poems and poetry and making people feel something. Mirtha Michelle is a Dominican-born poet, author, actress, and artist. She wrote the best-selling poetry book, Letters to the Men I Have Loved, which has spent over 2 years in the top 20 best-selling love poems category on Amazon. Her work also spans outside of literature to television, film, and speaking engagements at colleges around the country. When I tell you, when you hear her voice speaking, it was just so soothing. And this episode was all about love, self-love, love through relationships, love through religion, love with partners and friendships, and who you are and figuring out who you are. I am so excited for you to listen to this episode. I know this is one that I'm going to always come back to, and we will leave in the show notes the links to her books because they are amazing. I'm really excited to hear what you think. Let's dive in. Hello. I am so excited for you guys to tune in. I know you've heard her bio and everything that I've shared ahead of time, but this conversation is going to be such a passionate and vulnerable one, and I know that I need it just as much as you do. So, Mirtha, I am so excited you are here. I have been following your journey for so long, and recently I dove into your 18 Inches book. And so before we dive into this, and I told you I turned into a journalist because my notes, I'm telling you, I was crying, I was laughing. I felt we have experienced so many similar things. But before we get into that, if someone doesn't know who you are, what would you say you really want people to know about you? Like, who are you?
I always respond that question with the word passionate.
Mhm.
I'm a passionate woman who believes in love, and not just the romantic version of love, unconditional love. The type of love that requires sacrifice, the type of love that is kind to strangers or to family members, the kind of love that doesn't play games. I'm an artist, but overall, I'm a woman. I'm a woman first. So yeah, I always say that that's the one word that fully defines me. I'm passionate. I do everything with either my heart completely in it, or I don't do it at all.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very all or nothing personality, and yeah, I'm passionate. I believe in love.
I love
I
it.
believe love is the connection between all human beings.
Mm-hmm. And, when I was thinking about the theme of what I wanted this podcast to be about, love came up. That was like the one word that I felt really could describe the feeling that I got from reading your poetry, from seeing the content that you share on your social, and seeing how you just live your life. Like, truly, like it felt like there was so much love. I saw there was self-love there. Love between relationships, love between friendships, like all of that, I experienced it through the content that you brought to life. And there was a quote that you said, and it was, "The love I craved was already inside of me." Now, I wrote that not even to bring it up during this interview, but I felt like when I tell you, I was like, I want to be a poet. I just felt every single thing when you were saying it, and that is hard to do for strangers. like two strangers. And so I actually, that quote, I felt like I needed to hear that more than ever. That the love that at times we are craving is inside of us.
Already inside of us.
It's already inside of us.
Yeah.
That's hard for some of us to understand. And we have very similar upbringings. We've experienced a lot of the similar traumas. And again, these are all things that I learned from reading 18 Inches. So 18 Inches, why the name? What does that mean?
Okay, so I always love to explain what 18 inches means because so many people get the wrong idea. Uh, 18 inches is, and the subtitle of the book is The Distance Between the Heart and Mind. And 18 inches is the distance between, the average distance between the heart and the head in most human beings. So if you walk your fingers from your heart to your head, the average distance is 18 inches in all human beings. So every decision we make in our lives is based on 18 inches. Either you're making a decision with your heart or you're making a decision with your head. And what I understood is that I don't want to give away the book for the audience who hasn't read it, but it's more than just choosing between your heart and your head.
Mm-hmm.
You have to arrive in your life to a place of peace in which you're making a choice that's balanced between heart and head. So I found that for me and for many people, that choice is according to the soul. There's peace when you make a decision according to your soul.
I love that.
And you have to, everybody goes through different experiences. This book for me is my most vulnerable work. And it's because I'm sharing 18 decisions that I made that throughout my life that led me to that point of me understanding growth and finding the voice of my soul.
Yeah. In the book, you go through 18 inches. And each one of them, each inch, you titled it as a chapter. And so as I was reading every single one of them, I took notes on a lot of the things that really stood to me. So we're going to go through the 18 without going through each of the chapters. But pain is the first one. Destiny is the next one. Brave. Pride. I stopped at pride because I felt like pride gets in the way of us allowing us to love ourselves, but allowing others to love us. Pride is our ego, our pride, it is so powerful that it like truly
blinds
us.
Blocks blessings.
How did you feel like after experiencing the things that you've experienced that you're sharing in here, even now, accomplishing the things that you've accomplished, building the life that you have built for yourself, where do you find that balance between like pride and like letting it go and not letting pride blind you? Like how?
It's funny because I always say that we never stop learning. There's a quote about, you don't stop learning. It doesn't matter what age, you could be 80 something years old and we never stop learning. So I know that there's still so much more that I have to learn, but up to now, I understood that I was always a very stubborn child as a kid, and I held grudges. I am a Capricorn. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. And it was something I always battled, my pride, my ego. And I don't think I became a prideless person immediately, but I understood the consequences of making decisions based on pride. And I understood how it's only really hurting yourself.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between having pride and having dignity, for example. A lot of times people confuse those two things, especially in love. It's like you can have dignity and not move a certain way. That doesn't have to mean pride.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, I understood that what keeps us away from true love, and I'm talking about unconditional love, self-love, is pride. It's ego. Nothing that is opposite of love can help the cause of love. So if I'm a person that I want to practice real love at all times and walk in love, then I have to leave the ego and the pride behind. Obviously, we all have moments of weakness, but if I remained walking in pride, I would never come around and say sorry. I would never come around and take accountability. So I think that was like the biggest thing for me to understand, that it's okay to take accountability. It's okay to come around and apologize. And it's also important to do it with yourself.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're just hurting yourself.
100%. And, looking through each of the chapter, pain is really the start of it all, because when you're thinking, I think about pride all the time, even in my relationship with my husband. Like, I've experienced so much pain that I'm holding on to that pain.
You're holding on to that pain.
And so the pride isn't even like...
you're holding on to the trauma.
Holding on to the trauma. And so even again, I'm telling you, notes and notes that everyone has to read this book, because it's just so crazy how you experience this pain and it goes through destiny, and then you have bravery.
I wanted to paint a journey in all my books. I always want people to feel a journey.
Yeah.
Like a roller coaster. And I knew that I wanted to end it with love, with what I finally understood love to be. But I needed to get there. I needed to express and share how it started. The pain, the feeling that we all sometimes experience, and sometimes we experience it silently. And I wanted to start with that. And it's always tricky, because it's like, wow, am I going to start that depressing?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you, it started quick.
It started, like you probably felt like a bus hit you.
I was like, what am I about to read right now?
Yeah. It's heavy.
Yeah.
It's really heavy. But it's really meant, I dedicated the book to the broken.
Yep.
I wanted to remind people of their strengths. I am not a gimmicky type of poet that's like an advice poet. I'm sharing stories and experiences, but I wouldn't consider myself a relationship advice person. I make mistakes all the time. I'm just sharing my journey. Hopefully it could inspire others to walk in love. That's my purpose. But yeah, I started it strong. I know no other way.
Which is amazing.
It's like Letters to the Men I Have Loved, my first book. I started it off with lust, like the lustiest story. And it hooked a lot of people. People like sex. But this one, I was like, let me go at it. I think because this book also it's more spiritual than most of my other books, and it's really vulnerable, and it's really about causing change.
Yeah.
Causing change within ourselves. So,
but what I experienced with when it started with pain is it allowed me to immediately be vulnerable. And I think the more vulnerable we are, the more that we are allowed really feel that self-love. You know, I feel like experiencing love, both sides of relationships and friendships, and within myself, and even like showing up as a mother and showing up as an entrepreneur, all the things, I had to be vulnerable. And so truly starting with pain, it kind of forces you to, as the reader, to be like, okay, that we're setting the tone of this as vulnerability. Another chapter that brought me to tears was death.
Yeah.
Death is a very weird thing for me. That I can't process it well, and not that I follow in shambles. I just don't understand it. Like, I just don't understand how one day you can be here and the next day you can't. And I also don't understand that if we know that for a fact, if we know that we have an end day, why is it so hard for us to like cherish life and not let the little things hold us, and like we only have a few days. Like, why
Mm-hmm.
is that, you know? And so that chapter, learning about Anna Rosa, and even like I was smiling hearing like, this is where you got your dimples
Oh,
from,
yeah.
you know? Like, I was like, oh my God, like it literally brought me to the tears, as if I was experiencing and being in
My
there with you.
childhood.
Yeah, your
Yeah.
childhood. And so that started young. Again, that all of these things that you experienced started very young. And then you go into faith, where it kind of felt like I was taking a deep breath after.
Mm-hmm.
And so you talk about God in this chapter. And I know at my lowest moments, I have definitely felt like I've gotten closer to God. But it's also at my lowest moments, and I know many of us do it, even after death.
That we lose faith.
You're like, you question it.
Yeah.
You're like, you're angry. You
Yeah.
know, I've heard so many people were like, they say, well, if God existed,
Why would things happen?
why would this happen to me? Why
Yeah.
would they take away this person? Why would they do this? And so
Mm-hmm.
you start questioning faith. And so I'm interested to hear how faith plays a role in your life, and like how you continue to hold on to that throughout the experiences.
Well, to be honest, it was very tricky for me to add this chapter of faith because um, writing in the secular world, and I myself, I have certain strong opinions of religion. So I don't consider myself a religious person. I consider myself a spiritual person, and I live my life with faith. Definitely, I believe hope is essential.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of love. But I just, from an observant point of view, I always looked at people who practice certain religions, how they would become consumed by religion and sometimes not practice the very things
Mm-hmm.
that the religion should inspire them to practice.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I grew up in church in a Christian denomination, and I always noticed that so many Christians would judge more than love, and I read the Bible, and it's like everything is pointing to love, not to judge.
Mm-hmm.
So I immediately, since a young age, I said that I didn't want to be that way.
Yeah.
That I wanted to be a person who practices love and does the things that love, the characteristics of love,
Yeah.
that practices the characteristics of love. So when I began writing this chapter, faith, my entire life, I'm an artist. Artists, they must have some sort of faith, just to live, to exist,
Yeah.
right? Because we're creators. And I believe all human beings are creators. I think we all have this God particle within us that enables us to create. That's why we can manifest. We can, our thoughts create our reality. And so I understood that regardless of my opinion on certain religions and how people choose to live, that's not my problem. I'm not going to deter my faith in a supernatural energy because other people that claim that they practice certain religions do otherwise, right? So I realize I don't focus my eyes on people because we're all imperfect human beings. So I always decided to keep, to focus my faith in this supernatural force that I witness every day in my life. And it's like I wake up in the mornings, we all wake up in the mornings, and we see supernatural things happening every day. And how can you not believe that there's something else out there? So it's like I came to the understanding everyone gets to believe something different. Everyone gets to believe whatever they want. But my life has always been improved when I have faith.
Yeah. Faith is like, it allows you to hold on to something bigger than other humans, right?
Yes.
And when I talk about this a lot. So I found out I grew up very religious, very conservative family, church every Sunday school. My mom would wake up, she still to this day prays all the time and reads the Bible, and she's truly such a religious and spiritual person. Okay. And growing up, I experienced a lot in the church of like random rules that like were not in the Bible. These are just like man-made rules, right? Like random things of like, okay, in your wedding, you can't show your shoulders in your wedding. Why?
Yeah.
Why can't I show my shoulders? Right? And I'm Coptic Orthodox. So it's like, it was just so interesting. So I experienced this and I was like, oh, like I can't question things. I can't question things. Like I just got to follow it. Right? This was in my head. Fast forward, I'm 23. I find out I'm pregnant. I'm not married, right? And I have to tell my immigrant parents that brought me here from Egypt to live a better life that I got pregnant at 23 and I'm like living in New York City. I don't have that much money. I'm like, what hell
are you going to do?
What the hell am I going to do? And I'm like, okay, like they're going to disown me. This is going to be like the craziest thing in the world. And, my poor parents. And it was insane to see, you talk about unconditional love in this book. I saw unconditional love come to life, right? Through my parents. At the same time, I saw humans at church who I thought were going to be filled with love
judge
me and give me ultimatums that were like inhumane to ask someone to do, to save the face of a organization.
Yeah.
And I got so angry at how everything had played out to the point where there was a period of time that I was like I blamed it on religion. And it took a shift in me to go back to church to be like, wait a minute. I'm not upset at God. I'm not upset at my religion. I'm not upset at the Bible. I'm not upset at, like, these are just humans that are making rules up as they go.
And that's how I start
to
the
keep
chapter.
us in order.
Yeah, that's how I start the chapter. I started off like, the reality is that religion is man-made.
Yeah.
To control people. And sadly, it's caused a lot of division between human beings. That, how is it that a God creator that is all loving can do all of these other things? Like, it just didn't make sense for me. Yeah. And yeah, I decided to write about it because in the end, I'm writing about everything, everything that has been significant in my life up to then, all those choices I made. And one of the biggest choices that I made was like, you know what? I'm not putting my faith in a particular religion. I'm putting my faith in the creator of the universe. That's who I decided to put my faith in.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't necessarily practice a lot of the
Religion, yeah.
rules and certain things. I was very lucky also that my parents allowed us to choose, that
Yeah.
nothing felt forced while I was growing up. But I understand that everybody has a different childhood, everybody has a different experience. But I was very lucky about that. I was very lucky that I was allowed to ask questions.
Yeah.
I was always a very inquisitive child. But I definitely believe that it's really the root of everything is love. So it's like I decided to put my faith in love.
Which I was going to say, I love. You go through doubt, selflessness, intimacy, sex, fulfillment. I stopped at selflessness.
That was a very hard chapter to
Selfishness.
Yeah, that was a very hard chapter to write because it was something super personal.
Yeah.
About choosing that I wasn't ready to be a mother. And it was a very hard chapter to write because revealing something so personal to the world. But I'm happy I did it.
Yeah.
I freed myself
Me too.
from this burden that I had. And that's part of self-love as well, that you forgive yourself.
Yeah. I was saying, you know, I'm happy you wrote it because what I took the notes of is a lot of the times what holds us back from self-love is living in the past, which is
Yeah.
what you talk about.
Yeah.
And the past decisions can truly take over us to the point where it is so hard
To see a future.
It's so hard to see the future because you're holding on to the past. And that could be even the good and the bad. You know, and I felt like that really came to life in this chapter of just letting go of the past so it could allow you
To have a future.
And to not let anything define you. I really loved that. Sex, I loved that chapter. You know, what I wrote down was sex does not define love and love should not define sex. A lot of us have sex for love.
Yeah.
We are looking for love, and so we have sex. And when we don't get love back, right? Especially to like, I have so many of my friends who are single, and it's just like they're looking for love, and so they have sex, and they're not receiving the love, and now it's like
they feel empty.
I feel empty, but I gave you sex. Why don't I have love back? And they're so separate.
So separate.
What was that experience? And I feel like, again, as women, we are so passionate and we're so intimate, and we crave intimacy, but I also realize intimacy and sex are different. How was it like? What are your thoughts on this?
It's interesting because in the chapter of intimacy, I loved writing that chapter because I was just going through all the men in my head, like all the men that I've had also friendships with, and we never had sex, and they impacted me. Maybe it was one great conversation we had in a random city in the world, and maybe I've never seen them again, and we're just Instagram friends now or something like that. But I thought of so many different experiences, and I find it so beautiful that you can become intimate with someone, you can have intimacy with someone and never touch them. I find that so powerful because intimacy is not, it's allowing someone to see your vulnerability. It's allowing someone to to see that part of you that you don't necessarily share. And we don't always allow people in. So the moment you decide to allow someone into your life and know your deepest secrets and how you think, that's creating a bond
Yeah.
between two people, a bond that you might not ever break. And I love that chapter because I tell a story about someone I did have a relationship with in my youth, and we had run into each other, and yeah, and it was like that silent bond that exists. Didn't matter how much our lives had changed, there was still that certain amount of intimacy that only we knew.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's a romantic chapter.
I loved it.
Because it's full of ideas. I think ideas can be romantic.
Yeah.
It's like the word maybe. I always say the word maybe is romantic. Like maybe this could happen. Maybe that could happen.
The potential of
things. But yeah, sex has nothing to do with love. And, there's plenty of people that are in marriages, sexless marriages, and they still love each other, but they don't have sex anymore. It's like, it all depends on people and what you want out of your sexual life. Some people are not very sexual beings, and some people are. For me, what I was expressing in that chapter is that I didn't want to live a life full of taboos, and I wanted to apply all the colors to my sex life that I desired. And I didn't want to feel constrained by certain ideologies of how things should be. And especially like when you grow up very sheltered, as we both did. So I described a bit of my first sexual experience and how that sort of impacted me. And yeah, it was a fun chapter. It wasn't very long. I didn't give that many details.
Yeah, don't be reading this book if you think
expecting
you're
erotica.
The next ones were fulfillment.
I'm not Anais Nin, not yet, at least.
You gotta wait for the next one. But yeah, it goes fulfillment, happiness, which that one stood with me because a lot of the times, again, and I talk about this a lot, we want external validation to make us happy. And you were talking about it as it is not dependent on anything. It is a choice. You get to choose to be happy.
Yeah, I got some backlash for saying that because a lot of people, some people, they wrote to me. I think that was the only backlash I got.
What did they say?
Throughout the book. Some people said that some people are mentally ill and they cannot choose to be happy. The reason I said that it could be a choice is because I believe everything is a choice. I have a relative who is bipolar and takes medication every day to balance her hormones,
She wants to choose how she feels.
She chooses.
Yeah.
She chooses to take that pill that has made her life better. I think everything is a choice. Yeah. Nowadays, we have choice. If you were talking about, mental health 40, 50 years ago, actually even like 20 years ago, there was lots of taboos around it.
Yep.
But nowadays, I believe we have more of a choice. Women have more of a choice to how they want to live their lives. Everyone in general has more choice. Even if they're living in I think the only people that don't have much of a choice, it's like if they're living in oppressed regimes around the world. Obviously, there's still so many countries that don't allow certain freedoms. But in America, in most of the Western world, most people have a good amount of choice.
100%.
And I believe happiness, joy, it's not something that comes around every day. Life isn't perfect, obviously, but I do think that you have a choice of how you're going to react to certain difficult moments.
Mhm.
If you're going to react in anger, or if you're going to take a step back and think about your reaction.
Yep.
And I when I was writing that chapter, I continuously thought of my travels and going to different parts around the world. And I always realized that the happiest people I've ever encountered have been in the most impoverished places that I've visited. And I asked myself, how is that? How is that these people that don't even have much access to the outside world are smiling
I'm so
and
grateful.
and grateful, and the joy exudes from their pores? How is that? And I started understanding that sometimes the validation we seek from society, the pressure, the comparisons that we tend to create, is what robs us of
Mhm.
our happiness. Like always wondering how things could be instead of being grateful for the present.
Yeah.
When you were saying earlier about your confusion behind death, and how is that we could be here one day and then we're gone, it's like, would we actually take advantage more of the days that we do have if we knew how many days we had? And I always think about that. If we learn to live in the present and live in gratitude, we will not stress out about the little things that normally stress us out.
Yep.
And when I when I was writing this chapter, I just kept on thinking about these faces of these people that impacted me throughout my travels. And it reminded me, wow, you're blessed. Start walking in gratitude every day,
Mhm.
man. And because if they feel blessed too, you have you have the ability to feel blessed as well, and to be grateful for life, to be grateful that you're alive, that you get another chance at another day,
Mhm.
to do things differently, to do things better, to love more, to hug the people you love
Yep.
again, or to talk to them. Every time I experience a loss, I think that's what affects me the most. It's like I won't be able to hear that person's voice
Mhm.
anymore. I can see their face through images that I have, but I won't be able to hear their voice. I can't pick up the phone and call them. I can't experience that.
Yeah.
And it's just really, I believe happiness and joy, it's a choice
It is a
that
choice.
you make every day. When you wake up, you tell yourself what kind of day you want to have.
Mhm.
And trust me, some days I am not this beam of light.
Yeah.
Some days I feel depressed. But one thing that I've told myself is, if I feel depressed one day, I let the emotions, I let them be. I feel them. But then that following morning, I'm going to snap out of it.
We were just talking word for word
I'm going to
what we
snap
just
out of
said.
it.
Yes.
I make that choice. Okay, you felt it. You
Mhm.
cried. You had the wine.
Mhm.
You cried. You felt all the things,
Yeah.
You sang the sad songs. You did it.
Watched yourself in the mirror cry.
Yes,
You did all
yeah.
of the things.
You did it, but you're going to get up the following morning. You're not going to stay home. You're going to get up and you're going to try your hardest to change that emotion
Yep, you're going to choose
around.
that happiness. I tell Sebastian every day before he goes to school, word for word, I say, baby, you get to choose what kind of day you have.
Yeah.
You get to choose how people make you feel. Like, you get to choose that.
Yeah.
You get to allow someone either in your space, in your energy, to invade your happiness or not.
Or not.
That is your choice. Every single day. Literally, he'll take his little backpack that's too big for his body and, walk it to school. And it's the best thing. And it's like, my parents did an amazing job raising me, but I've never heard that.
Yeah, because I don't think a lot of our parents had the knowledge.
Knew that. Or knew how to
They were just
tap
repeating
into
the
that.
same cycles, and I think this is one of the first generations that has all of these books on how to change generational trauma,
and people are talking about it,
and people are vocalizing it, and there's all of these conversations. We're talking about it now. I don't think our parents had that opportunity. I taught my mom about energy.
Yeah, which is so funny. Like, it's just, I even now, like, my parents, when I talk about certain things, like how open I am about how I got pregnant and when I got pregnant, I mean, it still probably like horrifies them. But I know that being able to talk about it gives me peace, but also inspires someone else to be able to choose to talk about their pain and their sufferings and their trauma. And it's just, I do think it's a choice. And I agree with you. The next one was patience, adventure, identity, purpose, and love. Throughout that transition of now going into love, what would you say was one of those chapters that really like stuck with you? Was the pivotal moment for you to get closer to love?
I'd say it was identity.
And why was it that one?
Identity. I love this chapter because when I wrote this chapter, I was like, whoa, it's like something opened up for me. I felt it was divinely inspired. I believe most of the confusion that exists in the world, it's because of identity. People don't know who they are, and they look for identity in others and in things. This is why a lot of times people, they need to have a title.
Yes.
For who they are. It's very important for them to have a title. They need a title to have a professional title or to have a title in their personal life. They need to be a wife, or they need to be a girlfriend, or they need to be a mother. It is part of their identity, right? Identity plays a big part at how you show yourself to the world. For example, it's like you attach your value to your title. And I started understanding, wait, hold on. I do many things. I am many things. What if I stop writing? Am I still going to be able to use the title of a writer, of an author, of a poet, even if I don't write another poem ever in my life? Can I still use that title? And I started thinking, well, what about if I get married and then I get divorced? Am I going to change my Instagram bio to divorcee?
Literally.
What are we doing as a society here? We are continuously attaching titles to value to our identity.
Yeah.
When in reality, all of those things can change. All of those titles can change. So I understood, what is the one thing that does not change? Love. God's love. That is the one thing that doesn't change. Love. The love I have inside of me, that exists within me, that exists in the universe, that's unconditional, that's a choice to take in or not. So I decided that I was not going to attach my identity to these things that can change.
Last year, I attended an event, and I just talked about this, which was crazy. I attended an event, and it was a networking event. We had to get up and stand in front of a random stranger, and they were like, tell them who you are. And before we did, they said, but you can't say that you're an entrepreneur. And I was like, oh, it's easy. I'm a mom. And they were like, and you can't say you're a mother. And you can't say that you're a wife. You can't use titles. Honest to God.
You didn't know what to respond.
I had nothing.
Yeah.
I literally looked at her. Thank God we only had 3 minutes, because I was like, I need this to end. This is like my worst nightmare. And I had nothing to say. To the point where I was like, I was born in Egypt. Like, I was just like, this is the most awkward situation of my life. I was like, I genuinely don't know who I am. Like, I don't know who I am outside of being a mom. Entrepreneur, fine. Yes, I love what I do, but like, my sole purpose on this earth is for my child. Stripping that away from me is like,
you felt you had nothing.
who the hell am I?
You're like Whitney Houston. I have
Literally,
nothing.
it's like, nothing. But literally, I'm like, I had no idea who I was. And, you know, we attach ourselves, which I love that you said attach. Not only do we attach ourselves to the title, but then our purpose is attached to that title. Our why, our reason to function is attached to that title. And I think back to even like thinking about motherhood, my poor kid, I'm putting this pressure on him that like, it's him or my whole life is over. It's like, what kind of pressure am I putting on him for my happiness? Like, it's crazy.
You know, I use the word attachment, because one thing that I've understood about love is that love is freedom. And to practice true love, you have to practice non-attachment. Like loving without being attached. Because attachment usually comes from the fear of losing.
Wow.
Attachment and losing comes from ego. And I go into that in the chapter of love. But in identity, I just love that chapter so much, because it was like an eye-opener for me. Who are you going to be? Who are you?
Yeah.
You are, first of all, a spiritual being having a physical experience here. How am I evolving my soul? How am I learning more about love? These were the questions that I was asking myself at the time. But I'm still living in the world. Who am I? And I started understanding that I cannot be attaching myself to other people's perception of me, to what other people expect me to be. Because if not, I was just going to be in an unending cycle of just really criticizing myself all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
I'm not good enough. I'm not this. Constantly comparing myself. And I was like, no, I am a person who believes in love. What is love? This is what I am. I am a characteristics of these things. So I started changing the way I thought about myself. And that is how I really started understanding and walking in self-love. Because it's one thing to say self-love, and people have all of these ideas of what self-love is.
Because it's a buzzword right now.
It is, and, self-care, it's one thing. Self-love, it's another thing. It's like, how are you valuing yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I understood that my value is not dependent on what I do for a living, who my friends are, my associations, who I date, whether I'm a mother or not. Because there's a lot of times you probably don't experience this, But when you get to a certain
Yeah.
age in your 30s, you will have people that are looking at you, judging you, as if you are not a woman enough because you haven't had kids yet. It's like, you don't know that what I want to do with my life. You don't know if I am waiting to meet the right person or not. You know,
Yeah.
you don't know these
They
things.
like pity you, and they actually like, I feel like they reflect how do I say it? They pretend all of your accomplishments don't exist because you don't have
exist.
that one thing. You're not
Or
married, or you don't have kids.
exactly. When in reality, everybody has a different story,
Yep.
right? And it goes back to the non-judgment aspect of how I've tried to live my life, right? But it's really funny because the moment you know who you are, it doesn't matter what
You're
people
not
say
affected.
about you. It doesn't matter what people assume, because you know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that is essential to practicing self-love. If you do not know who you are, how can you practice self-love?
Right.
There is no self-love if you don't know who you are. So I always tell people, and I've told people throughout my entire writing career, with all my books, the most important part of learning yourself is asking yourself questions.
Mm.
Ask yourself every question. Learn yourself to the point that you will know who you are, and no one can change that.
Doesn't matter. I want to ask you, for the woman that is listening to this, knowing that your last chapter is love, for the woman that is listening to this that is struggling with love,
Mhm.
self-love, love for relationships, opening up and allowing abundance of love, where does she start? What would you recommend her to do first?
Well, it really goes back to taking the time to learn yourself.
Mm.
I think that we constantly have been programmed by society, by our families, by our parents, friends, etc. We've been constantly programmed that life has to play out a certain way, and that you have to do certain things and just check them off. And if you do one thing, you'll get the consequence you've been expecting, right? And everybody has a different story. But the biggest life-changing moment for me was when I actually took the time to get to know myself.
Mm.
I think so many times we take the time to get to know others.
Yep.
I always say, date yourself for a little while. We go on these dates with others, and what do? We ask them questions because we're interested in them and we want to get to know them. But when have you ever done that with yourself?
Yeah.
When have you asked yourself questions and that you've learned yourself so well that no other person on this planet can say they know you better than you know yourself?
Mm.
That if things fall apart in a relationship, you're able to pick yourself up and remind yourself, hey, I got this because I know who I am.
Yeah.
That when you're at the office and you get into a discussion with a coworker and they accuse you of something, you know that is not the truth. So you're able to hold your ground.
Mm-hmm.
It creates a sense of self-confidence when you know who you are. I always compare it to when you're studying for an exam. The more you study for the exam, the more confident you're going to be when you take the exam. So study yourself.
Mm.
Study who you are. Study what you like, what you don't like. And you'll be able to make those choices in your life according to who you are. That's why I say you got to listen to your soul. Your soul is the most honest, truthful part of who you are. The mind speaks for the physical.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
For the ego. And the heart speaks for your emotional side, but your soul speaks for your spirit, because that's what we are. We're spiritual beings here. And you got to listen to your soul. And the only way you could recognize the voice is by finding your own truth.
I love that. I love that so much. I could talk to you for literally hours. That was like, and also you should start a podcast because you're just so calming when you're talking. Usually I'm like so loud and screaming, and you've like allowed me to like calm down.
I want to.
You should. No, you really should.
Yeah, I have an idea for one.
I think like the blend, which is what I'm going to ask you next. So we usually do rapid fire questions. But I would love for you to pick a poem and read it to us.
Sure.
Whatever your favorite poem is, but that's what I think a podcast should be. It's like all about love, all about self-love, like intimacy, all the things, all the chapters. And also we get to hear you read a poem.
I have a thing that I always start my books with an introductory poem that sets the tone for the entire book. And I really believe this book is really an expression of growth. And so this is how I start the book. When I asked for growth, why was I surprised that I was given rain? When I asked for friendship, why was I torn when the weeds were pulled from my flower beds? When I asked for courage, why did I fear when the day of battle came? When I asked for love, why did I cry when I had to face pain? I love this poem because it's human nature to ask for things, but sometimes we don't know the path to getting what we want.
Yeah.
I asked for growth. Why was I surprised that I was given rain? Everything needs rain to grow.
Yep.
When I asked for friendship, why was I torn when the weeds were pulled from my flower beds? Why was I torn when the ones that weren't great friends were torn from my life? Why did I question it afterwards? If I'm asking for sincere friendship, why was I torn when the weeds were pulled? When I asked for courage, why did I fear when the day of battle came? I had to be tested. And when I asked for love, why did I cry when I had to face pain? Because there is no love without pain.
Yeah.
Without experiencing some sort of pain. I'll read another one, a little bit more romantic.
They're so good. I'm telling you, it's so funny. I was like reading it and I'm like, wow, like she wrote this.
Yeah.
Like she wrote this poem. That's insane to me. It's amazing.
I know I give away
but
all
just
kinds
so talented.
of vibes.
Like when you see all kinds of vibes, but like everybody which is why I love like just working with women building their personal brand, because everybody has their talents.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful that is your talent. I wonder what my poem would sound like if I wrote a poem. It'd be a hot mess.
I'm torn between, God, there's so many that
there's
I
so
love.
many good ones.
It's always hard to choose because it's like choosing
a favorite child.
Babies.
Yeah,
You know?
I knew you were gonna say that.
But I love reading this one. I miss loving someone so strongly that my breathing fails me. I miss those moments, silent but palpable. I miss when I'm known well enough to have my mind read. I miss living awake because these days I only live asleep, dreaming of the beyond, escaping the routine. I miss those kisses full of madness when you know that your lover's lips are more yours than his. I miss those days when I touched the sky, days that are now recorded in every joint of my anatomy. How to erase experience, how to erase the knowledge of something so unique and special, how to erase you from me when everything you are is mixed with mine. Yeah.
Insane. It's like just so beautiful.
Thank you.
I can't wait for
the next one.
I can't wait for the next one. I can't wait for so many more people to read this. It makes you cry, it makes you laugh, it gives you chills. I'm telling you, it paused me. It I paused while I was reading it, and I was flooded with these feelings and experiences and emotions that came from the experiences that I had experienced.
Yeah.
And it was, again, it just made me fall in love with poetry and words. Like, I was like so amazed. Like, my brain just, I'm such a calculated person in everything. And I was like, I kept just saying, it's crazy how someone can make you feel something through just words, right? And from a marketing perspective, that's all it is, right? Like, when I think about marketing and messaging and branding, like,
it's everything is words.
It's words.
Yeah.
So
ideas
to get this to make you feel something was just so amazing. And so we end all the episodes with having our guests fill in this blank. So it'll say through, and then you'll fill in the blank. I did it anyway. So through whatever you've experienced, you share whatever words. I did it anyway.
Okay.
You fill in the blank.
Okay. Let's do it.
Let's think about what you went through and just say through. Like, what did Sonia say? She said, through the nose, through the self-doubt, through the fear, I did it anyway. So what are you going to say?
Through the pain, through the failures, through the men. Through the long nights, through the doubt, I did it anyway. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. I was going to say in there also, through the religion, I did it anyway.
I did it anyway.
Did a complete reprogramming of my life.
I loved it. This was awesome. I can't thank you enough for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you for being so vulnerable in the way you live and the way you write and the way that you just show up, because as someone that has realized that vulnerability inspires so many people, it changes the world. It changes people's lives. And
sharing truth.
It's hard.
Personal truth.
Yeah. It's hard to do that. And not just broadcasting, but being vulnerable. Like sharing sides of you that open judgment and open unkind words. So I was just so grateful for you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yay, that was amazing. And don't forget, no matter what, she did it anyway.
You did it, Mom.